Yeah, so welcome everybody to the licensing hearing on the 13th of April 2026. The first item on the agenda is for the subcommittee to elect a chair. I understand Councillor Nichols has been appointed, is that correct? So I'll pass over to Councillor Nichols to chair.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Just to start off with, this is a live webcast. A recording of the same will be made available to view on the council's website, so you can all look back and see how good you were. We are not expecting any drills today, so if the fire exit goes, back out those two doors as quick as you can, following me probably. Any apologies for absence? Nope. Right, introductions, we have a few. So myself, Councillor Nichols, Councillor Cuthbertson, Councillor Hook. We have officers, Leslie Cook, Head of Public Protection, Angela Bilby from Democracy Office, Sandra Brannigan, Senior Lawyer. We have Leeds Tap Limited, represented by Piers Warren. Morning, Piers. And James Hawksworth, you're the owner. Good. We have Kim Hollis from the police. Peace. Licensed Authority, represented by Gemma Kettlestream. Aye. And Public Protection, represented by Michael Golightly. Morning. We have representatives. The number is just the number that your application came in, so we can all reference who you are. We have Claire Bennett of York Science Park. Morning, Claire. Damien Murphy of XR Story. Morning. And Julian Richards of Archaeology Data Services. Welcome. Any declarations of interest? Good. Right. Now a dull bit. We need to consider the excluding the press and public during the subcommittee's deliberations and decision-making at the end of the hearing, on the grounds that the public interest in excluding the public outweighs the public interest in that the part of the meeting taking place in public under Regulation 14 of the Licensing Act 2003, Hearings Regulations 2005. Proposer? Councillor Hook, seconder. All those in favour? Carried. Good. To approve the minutes of the licensing hearing held on the 30th of November 2025. Any comments?
Oh, yes, I do, because I was actually there. Page 23 in the LGBTQIA, a U was snuck in as well, which I think, because the sensitivities ought to be eradicated. So I hope it didn't mean anything.
Pass. Right. Oops, sorry. Get to press your mic. That's item 6. We now come on to item 7, the determination of the application. But before we get to the determination of the application, because we haven't been to where we're talking about, we thought it's in the best interest that we actually go and have a look. I've read everything and it is confusing to read it, and I'm sure you'll all appreciate if we look at it. Unfortunately, you all have to stay here while us three go and have a good look and then come back. It just means when you're presenting, we can ask questions much more based on what we've seen rather than trying to guess from a picture and some words. So the hospitality of the council office is yours, and we're aim to be back by 10:45 at the latest, all being well.
We'll walk fast.
We'll walk as fast as we can. We've got our walking shoes on. So we'll see you shortly. Our meeting's adjourned. Welcome back, everybody. That was well worthwhile. Much clearer for us three at least. Right, so determinating the application. And for a start, obviously these microphones are a little bit annoying, but please put them on and speak clearly and slowly because not everybody's got 100% full hearing. So it's just important that we can pick up what's been said. So the procedure as we're going to follow through. The licensing manager will present her report and each party will have 5 minutes to ask questions about that report. They don't have to use those 5 minutes. It's just up to 5 minutes. Then each party will have 15 minutes in turn to make their representations. After each representation, each party will have the opportunity to ask questions of the representative for 5 minutes. The parties will be called to make their representation and ask their questions in the following order. The applicant, the police, public protection, licensing authority, and interested parties. Members of the subcommittee will have the opportunity to ask questions after each representation. Each party will then be given 5 minutes to sum up at the end, representatives in the following order: police, public protection, licensing authority, interested parties, applicant. Members then have the opportunity to ask any clarifying questions and then withdraw to make their decisions in private. Is that clear? That could be a long time if we all take all the time. So it's not about making your point over and over again. It's questions. You know, we will hear what you have to say at the point when it's your turn. It's just a case of asking for clarification of what's been said by each of the representatives. So we'll start off with Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the grant of a premise licence for Mittel River Restaurant at York Guildhall Restaurant, Lendal, York. The licensable activities applied for are late night refreshment indoors and outdoors from 11 p.m. until 1 a.m. every day, supply of alcohol on and off the premises from 8 a.m. until 1 a.m. every day, with opening hours 8 a.m. until 1:30 a.m. every day. The applicant solicitor will update members on changes proposed for these hours. A copy of the application and the plan of the premises can be found at Annex 1 of the report, and the premises is described in the application as a gastro brew pub. An overview of the circumstances in which entertainment activities are not licensable can be found at Annex 2. As part of the application, the operating schedule submitted by the applicant showing how the licensing objectives would be met can be found at paragraphs 10 to 14 on pages 46 to 49 of the report. I can confirm that this premises is located within the Community Impact Assessment Area. Section 9 of the Statement of Licensing Policy, which deals with community impact, can be found at Annex 4. I can also confirm that the consultation process was carried out correctly by the applicant. North Yorkshire Police have made representation based on the licensing objective for crime and disorder, and their representation can be found at Annex 5. Environmental Protection have made representation based on the public nuisance licensing objective, and their representation is at Annex 6. The Licensing Authority have made representation based on the crime and disorder and public nuisance licensing objective, and their representation can be found at Annex 7. There are 5 relevant representations from other persons. Representatives' details can be found at Annex 8, and the representations can be found at Annex 9. A map showing the general area around the premises can be found at Annex 10. The committee has the following options when making your decision. Option 1, grant the licensing the terms applied for. Option 2, grant the licence with modified additional conditions imposed by the licensing committee. Option 3, grant the licence to exclude any of the licensable activities to which the application relates and modify, add conditions accordingly. Option 3, refuse to specify a person on the licence as premises supervisor. Option 5, reject the application. Since the report was published, 2 agenda supplements have been published with additional information from the applicant. And I believe that the applicant, in their submission, will just be referring to the second agenda supplement. I have produced larger plans of the area around the premises, where the premises is located, and of the premises layout, so it's easy for people to refer to. I'm sorry there isn't one each, but there is definitely one to share. And that's an overview of the report, Chair.
Thank you. Questions?
Good morning, Chair. Can I just highlight, please? The police didn't receive the pack until Friday. So I've just been going through it, and at page 88 and page 89, which refers to the cumulative impact policy, our representation, specifically, which PC Hollis will be highlighting, refers to para 9.14. Para 9.14 on page 89 appears to be the old cumulative impact policy, talking about red and amber zones. So I just need to highlight that obviously that's our current representation doesn't relate specifically to red and amber zones. It relates to the current policy 9.14.
I apologise for that, Chair, and I will make sure updated pages are published and speak to the officer who wrote the report.
Thank you.
As long as we're all now aware on the right, I think that's good. We're not talking about. Any other questions for Leslie?
Thank you. If I may, Chair, can I ask licensing manager just to confirm the exact hours, because I had in mind that one of them was slightly different.
I've detailed the hours that are within the application form, but the applicant's solicitor will update you on the change of hours that they're proposing.
Thank you. Not thinking that. Thank you.
Chair, sorry to interrupt, but I know that the police have asked for questions of the licensing officer, but see, are you proposing to go around the table and ask all the other parties if they have questions of the licensing officer?
Any other questions for Leslie? Is everybody happy? Licensing officer, you're good. Police representation. Nope. I know. Too many pages here, isn't it? Sorry, applicant.
You.
Sorry, I just turned to page too far.
That's fine, Chair, and well spotted to Leslie. I'd noticed the same thing, and do you know what? It helped me because it made me read through your cumulative impact assessment and policy even closer this time to try and find the red and amber areas, which obviously no longer exist. I will try and stick to my 15 minutes, obviously, but apologies if I drift slightly. I'll do my best. I will be referring to supplemental 2. Apologies that you have 2 supplementals, but there were some ongoing discussions with the police, and so we ended up updating another condition. So 2 is the one I'm referring to. So pass aside supplemental 1 for the time being, and thanks for producing the big plans and the big map. They're really helpful actually for this application. So as Councillor Cuthbertson mentioned, there's been some changes to the application in terms of hours, and you'll find those in Schedule 2. The hours we're applying for now sit in line with the planning permission that was granted for this unit. So the supply of alcohol will be 10 AM to 11:30, 23:30 hours, with a 30-minute drinking up time. So that takes us to midnight. Late night refreshment amended accordingly, so from 2300 hours to midnight. And then the opening hours, apologies, that should read 10 AM to midnight, not 8 AM. So 8 AM was the original opening hour. It's 10 AM in line with the planning. So apologies, I missed that, I think. So effectively open 10 till midnight, if we want to look at it in simple terms. You'll also note there's no regulated entertainment there as well, but for the record. The planning permission I just referred to was granted for the whole Guildhall complex. So this forms part of a bigger planning permission for the area you've just looked around, which includes the offices and other spaces there as well. This means that the tenants, including, I think, the objectors here today, all share effectively the same landlord. And I'm going to submit that actually should give some comfort to all parties, because there is a landlord there who can step in. All tenancy agreements have conditions on not interfering with other people's rights, etc. So there is a mechanism for control within that. This unit has stood empty, we believe, for 2 years. until the applicant has come along. And part of the reason for that was the property team who have been dealing with this, which I believe is your council property team, were keen in part to see a local operator. You'll be pleased to hear that Jamie and his team are very much part of the fabric of hospitality in York, and I will deal with some of their other premises just for context in a moment. And the plan, you have the big version here for reference. It's in the papers at page 77, but the big plan shows rather helpfully, let me show you if I can. If I can show, the camera won't be able to pick this up, but at the top of the main floor, the area there at the top with all the bits and pieces in it, that's the trade kitchen. It's a very substantial trade kitchen. And you'll see below it, the area with the 3 dots in it, that's the microbrewery you'll have seen reference to. Now, one of the issues and concerns that's come out, in particular from the police and licensing authority, is, yeah, sure, you say you're going to do food, but really, you know, how can we be sure of that? Well, there's a £250,000 investment into this kitchen and £50,000 into the extract to make sure it doesn't disturb any of our neighbours. That is a very substantial investment into a premises if you're not going to be doing any cooking, candidly. The entrance and exit to the premises is via Lendal, and you'll have seen and no doubt walk down Museum Street to cross the bridge and come into it. So you've seen that there's various entrances. It's important that we talk about Lendal because obviously that is, if you like, the entrance and exit. The area around there, you know as well as I do, is sort of mixed use food and drink premises, but with a bit of an emphasis on food, I would say. As I found last night, to my chagrin, a lot of the kitchens close at 8 o'clock around there. So I got into town late and struggled to get something to eat, but I did find somewhere in the end and it was great. But kitchens tend to close at around 8 to 9 o'clock, especially on Sundays, because that's the way the trade goes. The brewery within the premises is a microbrewery serving the premises only. So it's not a brewery business looking to distribute wide and far. Jamie has a very nice and very good brewery elsewhere to do that. So this is very much part of the offer for here. It differentiates it and makes it quite a special place. The brewery itself is very much a focal point. It's got copper stills. It looks impressive. When you go in there, it will look very impressive. There's a large focus on local produce, which I know is a policy consideration for York and for you as a council. You don't get more local than producing your own beer, for one, but also the food offer is very much local supplier based. The food offer is based around a rotisserie style meat offer. So chicken, pork knuckles, all kind. Councillor Hook doesn't seem very impressed. I'm sure there's something on the menu for you as well there. There's an oyster shucking station. No oysters. Okay, right. I'm not winning over Councillor Hook with this, but and full menu roasts on a Sunday, very family friendly. So there is a very substantial food offer here. And indeed, it's a point of differentiation to the point that York Boats, who are effectively, you know, our neighbours on the river, have already made approaches to work with the applicant here for food for them as well. I mean, so this is quite a special food offer. The investment into this building is somewhere in the region of 1.2 to 1.6 million pounds, with a very significant rental price. Now, the reason I mentioned that is because you can't just serve a couple of pints and pay for all of this stuff. You have to operate as a food-led premises to do so. That doesn't mean that, you know, just going full restaurant conditions helps, because that actually stops customers coming in, and we've got to work to the customers we've got. But we do want to reassure everyone here that this is very much a food-led premises. 26 conditions offered as part of the original operating schedule, which is robust by anyone's standards. A point was made by the licensing officer in her representation that we didn't specifically mention cumulative impact in our application. Well, I understand why, if we were perhaps dealing with someone who's never been to York before, but I've been before this committee a number of times on cumulative impact applications. So has Jamie. We know the cumulative impact policy. As I say, I had to go back and reread it when I saw the amber and red were back, but we know the policy. We understand it's important to address the policy. And indeed, the applicant operates 4 other premises in York, 2 of which are food-led, 2 of which you might know are craft beer premises. In fact, we followed a template for one of the premises that the applicant applied for in cumulative impact when we made this application that was granted. Now, that premises never operated, never opened. So there is a license sitting with a landlord somewhere. The premises operates as a shop because getting hospitality premises in is challenging. So we did follow what we thought was a good template for making the application. There are additional conditions we've added following consideration of all the relevant representations. You'll be pleased to see, and this is where I'll refer to Schedule 2. It was originally in colour. So I'm afraid the only way you can tell where there's the new conditions is that they don't have numbers next to them. So those are the new conditions if you don't have a colour version. But you'll see outside terraces to close at 2300 hours. You've seen the premises. There are no residents around there. So that ties in with Mr. Golightly's representation. We've got minimum seating capacities in the premises. For the size of this premises, it means it's laid out to tables and chairs. And you'll see that terraces, when it's a beautiful sunny day like today, will be laid out to a minimum number of tables and chairs as well. Last night, probably not so much. As I say, I got drenched walking back to my hotel. There is a change to condition 2, which is the door staff condition. So we've added in door staff on a Saturday in agreement with the police. And then over the page, you will see some other conditions that at the bottom of page 2 and top of page 3, which were added following discussions with our neighbours and the other tenants of the Guildhall. So that includes things such as no outside speakers. We've also agreed there'll be no tellies or anything like outside as well. I mean, we haven't conditioned that, but that's part of the agreement with the landlord. Delivery restrictions, movement and binning bottle restrictions. There are internal bottle stores here, so all the rubbish and bottles are disposed of internally and then removed externally. We've also agreed to keep smoking and vaping away from Guildhall, and that was in discussions. I'm going to submit not adding that as a condition because we're just about to get the smoking bill. The smoking and vapes bill is going to become an act of parliament, and within that there are certain regulations that the government can add on where people can smoke, and that includes around education establishments. So there might be changes. So if we add a condition here, we might find we start conflicting with what's coming out there. But the idea is to keep smoking away from the tenants. And all that was proposed following a meeting with the landlord and a representative from the Science Park and University, I believe. It was Nick Collins from the council who led that. So we've added a lot to the best practice on the conditions that we have there: staff training, no drinks away from the external areas, CCTV, joining the night radio system, incident refusals registers, inspections and cleaning, challenge 25, and importantly, substantial food is one of the conditions on the license. Now, substantial food is a discussion I've had with the police, but it forms part of your policy. The wording substantial food is used within your own cumulative impact policy. So I suggest we stick with the wording substantial food, albeit we're not saying that every drink must be served with substantial food here. And that's just a modern reality of operating premises. But substantial food must be served between midday and 9 o'clock in the evening. That's a minimum standard, not a maximum standard. So representations, police, we have a discussion ongoing about when food is available. We've set the minimum times for the kitchen. The success of the premises will be, to a large extent, based on the success of the food offer. It is a very expensive thing to run a kitchen nowadays. This kitchen will run with 4 staff as a minimum. So in terms of staffing costs alone, that is about £200,000 a year. So every hour where you've got everyone standing around because no one wants to buy food is a very considerable cost to a business. which is why a lot of kitchens are closing at 8 o'clock at night in York at the moment. Energy prices are very high, and I'm afraid likely to go higher with the world energy shocks that we're facing. Business rate relief has been changed, national insurance, minimum wage have all added about 20% to cost basis for premises. I'm a trustee of the BII, the British Institute of Innkeeping, and they're expecting 80% of their premises not to make a profit this year, 80% of their organisation. You can also take into account, and I submit that you should take into account the fact that the applicant operates 4 hospitality businesses in York and 8 others in other cities, most of them large city centre locations. Very good operators, no issues of crime and disorder, certainly nothing that we've been made aware of. And evidence of best practice should be given considerable weight when looking at these matters, I submit. Environmental protection, we've agreed the 2,300 hours for close of the external area. Licensing, rep, cumulative impact. I'd remind this committee that each application must be determined on its merits. This isn't an iron, the old phrase, this isn't an iron curtain that clangs down on good applications. You still have to make representations, and there's a case on that, the Brewdog case, which I'm sure this committee's heard before, and I know your legal advisor will know, that says, good operators should not be refused license applications simply because of cumulative impact. As I say, the fact we didn't refer to cumulative impact doesn't mean it was ignored. We are very experienced and cognizant of the policy here, and the operating schedule was designed around, as I say, a previous granting cumulative impact. The premises is going to be very heavily food oriented, as we've said, and set out significantly to tables and chairs, which are both points made in your cumulative impact policy. And the robust operating schedule, we say, seeks to balance all these competing interests to try and allow a premises to operate successfully nowadays in constrained environments, but also give you the protections and your officers the protections they want. And so we've tried to thread that needle in the application you have today. Finally, I just want to add into the mix, before we talk very briefly about business objectives, the National Licensing Policy Framework, which I'm sure your solicitor has come across, and you may have come across in applications since November last year when it came into force. I advised 3 of the 6 largest pub companies in the country on it, including the chairman or co-chair of the licensing sprint committee on this matter. So the licensing sprint was there to try and rebalance what they saw was a push towards actually constraining good businesses and stopping them operating in what are challenging circumstances, if you like. That was the predicate for what 12 different pieces of advice that came out of it. The National Policy Framework was one of them. The Licensing Policy Framework was one of them. And it introduced a new paragraph into the section 182 guidance, which you may know said that, if I can read it for you. Sorry?
Briefly, your time's getting.
Very briefly, thank you. When making licensing decisions, all licensing authorities should consider the need to promote growth and deliver economic benefits. And the National Licensing Framework follows on from that and actually sort of requires you to look at matters as enabling and not being prescriptive. You can ask any questions you want about that. Very quickly, the business objectives, we've recognised the concerns. We've tried to deal with them in conditions. They are business concerns, so their concerns are slightly different from the usual late night hours for residents, but just trading during the day. The low hubbub of a predominantly restaurant-based business, we submit, would not cause a public nuisance, which is the test here in terms of the application, and given all the other conditions, we suggest we've made a good stab at making sure that everything is appropriate and proportionate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Questions? I've got the right list this time. These questions.
Sorry, I couldn't get that to work. No, I just wanted to 100% clarify, because I know from last week, I still had it down as an 8 o'clock in the morning opening. It is going to be 10. Okay, that's absolutely fine. I'll remain mine. Thank you.
Apologies, I missed that.
Anything else? Good. Public protection, Michael.
Yes, I have a question about the access to the site outside of working hours. would the general public still have access to that external area once the premises is shut, or can that be closed off?
Yes, that's you might.
Yes, so the main front entrance off Lendal is, as part of the main original planning application, is for a fully gated, ornate gated facade that sits in line with the House of Trembling Madness. The entire entrance way on that alleyway is to be totally clean of refuse. It shouldn't be used as it is now. It's used as a bit of a dumping ground by other tenants, and that'll be completely cleared with CCTV running all the way down and lighting all the way to our premises. And the close of business, those gates close on the front entranceway. So it becomes totally controlled.
It is controlled.
Yes, totally controlled.
Yeah, just to clarify, so it's controlled, so people don't actually, after 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, the general public can't gain
No,
access to it.
the last member of staff out closes up, which is the management closed down.
So it'd only be the officers people, and they'd have passes, wouldn't they?
Yeah, as they are now, key fobs. There's a current gate there at the moment, which is a gate fob key. That was built, actually, I'm told by the council, as part of the build, just as a security measure. Those gates will be removed and cleared up as part of the front entranceway.
Brilliant, thank you, yeah.
Licensing?
There's nothing from me, thank you.
Representors? Claire, any? Oh. Damien?
Yeah, just one question about access, the change, I think that the point about, coming down Lendal is next to the House of Trembling Madness is a really important one. And again, we would certainly welcome that change. However, the security gate was put in somewhat later in the build of the Guildhall, and that was partly due to individuals finding their way on site. And I guess that if that is to be removed, then it's possible for individuals to find their way through that entranceway into the site and therefore through the rest of the site. I guess, hopefully, as you saw on your walkthrough, that it's a very interconnected site with two main entrances. And both of those entrances, even if one is for residents in the business part and one is for tenants or clients at the new tenancy in the new build, will find their way onto the rest of the site. And I wonder what the plans are for managing that footfall.
So a single point of entry allows us total control of the terraces. The entrance into Guildhall is controlled by Guildhall's gates, and I believe there's a discussion going on at the moment about the relocation of the gates you're talking about, going down onto the lower section, which is quite heavy CCTV presence down there. But I agree, I don't think it's an area that we wanted to have people leaving the terrace into that back area. Also, it's a dead end out of hours, so once the Guildhall's closed, people have got no reason to be going down in that area. So I'd fully support that. But from a access into our terraces and our courtyard, certainly the bigger scheme plan is to make that a much more pleasant experience. At the moment now, even I think when a conversation on site with Kim was the corridor in the evening, that back area is known as a bit of a sort of dropout area. It's not somewhere where people want to go. It doesn't look very pretty either. And of course, it's not in our interest to have an unfavourable entrance. We really need to promote that as quite a nice space. So this hence, as part of the big wider planning application that went in for the whole £24 million Guildhall development, the planners wanted to see an increased visibility on the entrance gates. And I think you can see those drawings on the planning portal, the handmade wrought iron gates with name boards on and lighting, which looks quite nice.
Julian?
Just to let people know, if they're wondering why Angela's just entered the room, I did ask her if she would mind printing the correct section of the licensing policy so everybody's got it in front of them.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions of clarification, really. So I'm sort of unfamiliar with the wording of some of these operating schedules, and it refers throughout to a minimum seating capacity, both inside and external. And I was expecting, I think, more to see a maximum figure, because we have concerns about the number of people that may be
on the terrace, because we're concerned particularly about fire safety and exit, because that route will be our main fire exit.
It's there is often a debate about this and how you license the numbers. The idea of licensing a minimum numbers of tables and chairs here is to prevent what used to be called vertical drinking in the old days. So lots of people standing and drinking, which was always considered a more noisy and potentially from a policing point of view, more fraught means by which things are done. So the idea of having minimum seating numbers means that the premises must have a significant amount of seating for customers. So that's why we've done it that way around, is actually so that for the benefit of the committee and everyone else, they know we can't clear all the tables and chairs out and just have a great big pub in there. And in fact, in the future, no one could do that without changing the numbers. So that's why there's a minimum number there to ensure there must be a lot of seating, which is a very good means of controlling customers.
So for clarification then, is the intention that it will be seated service only, or are you anticipating that people will be doing vertical drinking, was it the phrase you used?
I would say that the atmosphere we're trying to create is a seated one. It's our kind of trade that we want to take. We don't operate shoulder to shoulder, and I think the way that the general public now and the way spending people the behaviour of people in a bar environment, certainly the customers we attract are much more sociable and much more seated, a much more continental approach. Also, people tend to stay longer if they're comfortable. So we really want to promote more comfortable service. But to touch on capacity numbers, this is dealt as part of the wider fire policy for the site, which is a legal constraint. Our fire engineers work with the council's fire engineers to determine what the safe level of occupancy is on the building. And often that's greater than what we can physically put in the building because we've filled it full of seats and tables. So from a safety perspective, that'll be all part of the fire policy, which I believe there already is one. And I think it was submitted as part of the planning consent, but I hadn't had a chance to review this because I know that it'll be greater than what we can, the occupancy level we can put in there.
Okay, and just one further question, if I may. Are you intending that access to the terraces will be via the interior of the restaurant? Will it be like a wait here to be seated, or you are anticipating people will be going directly down the passageway onto the terrace without engaging with your staff?
I think it's all very weather dependent, but matter of fact that the main entrance brings you straight down the corridor from Lendal, would take you straight to the upper area, which is a smaller area. And to get access through there, you'd have to pass through meet and greet, maitre d', front bar, point of service, point of entrance. And that point then feeds you out. And this is the design, which unfortunately you only see on the licensing layouts, but it doesn't show furniture because the drawings don't require that. But yeah, the main point is through the front door on the corridor, and then the staircase. So it takes you through the pinch point, which is the upper bar area, servery, and then that runs you downstairs into the lower area. So I think that people who think they can just walk and go and sit down on the outside seating and expect to be served will probably be quite surprised that they won't. You'll have to make yourself known and be seated. And that's generally how the bar will go. And, to serve the amount of seats in there and having people wanting to come and order their food and drinks at the bar, it'll be untenable. So it's going to have to be done by waitress and serving staff.
I think just to clarify that, we're looking at sort of around 15 staff on site. So that's a minimum 4 in the kitchen and then a significant number who would be doing the waitress and waitress. We do want the people to be able to go up and speak to the bar people, have a look at the copper stills, see the drinks, talk to people. So we're not talking about saying you must be seated to have service. But as you've heard, actually, for the majority of people, and certainly in the outside areas, they would expect and anticipate to have service to the table, and that's what will be provided. In terms of seating and standing, it would be, I think, foolhardy to suggest everyone would sit all of the time. for various reasons. One, people might meet each other. You might see someone on another table, go and say hello. They'll stand and have a drink and have a chat or whatever. But the majority of people will be seated. We don't want to guarantee that would be everyone because we don't want to breach things unintentionally. But it is very much about seating and comfort. Sorry, yeah.
A classic thing we're seeing at the moment is a lot of work groups. So I operate 12 bars nationally, and we're seeing the change of the demographics, the age groups, the corporate set, which we don't get a massive amount of in York, but we still see the periods of time, which is probably 5 till 6:30, where people have been sat at desks all day, who just want to stand and have a talk to their colleagues and leave. We can't force them to sit down, but actually in the period after that, we have groups that stay all night and want to be in a reserved area of private service. So you have to allow that ebb and flow of the demographic to pass through the bars. And this is why we can't tie it exactly. But if you see like on the lower ground section where the brewery is, we want to educate people and show people how the brewing process works and also feel part of it. So we have a small servery that runs on the lower area around the back. So the back of the bar essentially is the copper vessels where people will be drawn to and actually can sit at the bar, and that's the level of service. So they'll be top seats, not stood out. And the reality is, unfortunately, I have to face facts that the reality is that there's 52 weeks of the year, and we're lucky if we see 12 weeks of sunshine, which means 40 weeks of the year it's raining. So these terraces, whilst they're beautiful and give a great aspect of the river, we have to put perspective of the time that these are going to be used and available. We're not in the continent, although it is nice to have offer outside dining where we can.
Yeah. So just to make sure I'm clear, because you visited the site and you went down the lane and then along the corridor, and our officers would be directly on the left-hand side of that corridor as you're coming down it. So, but I'm not clear whether you're saying that to get on your customers to get onto the upper terrace and then down to the lower one as well would be going via the interior of the restaurant, or whether they'd be going straight down the passageway, which takes them directly to our offices rather than.
I think that they'll be promoted to go through the main entrance at the end of the passageway straight into the venue, because that is the interior designs are designed to make that front entrance look really attractive. The problem you get with people, what the risk is if we don't make the ground floor, and it's quite a hard design. The layout of the site, it doesn't make it easy, but it's very important that the upper level, which is a smaller area, it looks interesting and there's a point of interest that drags people in. Mm-hmm. Because I think people are just wondering that they may get to the end of the corridor and turn around and leave and think there's nothing beyond there who've never been before. And I think people that see like a moth to the light, they'll be drawn into that area and they'll see a hub of activity. People will use the corridor possibly to exit the venue. If you've been sat on the lower terrace and you want to leave, chances are you're not going to fight your way through people who are still at the bar at the top. They'll exit straight out, but then they're a straight line exit onto Lendal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Just a follow-up question. Thank you, Chair. So is it the case then that members of the public could gain access to the terrace areas and then potentially the rest of the site without interacting with any of your staff?
If the gates are relocated, which we talked about, onto the lower section, as I think they believe they should be, but this is an issue with the landlord, which is City of York Council, and I don't see any reason why it can't be, then they would be unable to go down to Guildhall.
Yours now. Any questions?
Oh, yes, I've got a few, if I may. If I cover, sorry, do excuse me. Right. If I cover ground that's already been covered, I hope you'll excuse me because my hearing's the impaired one on this panel. So occasionally I miss a word when I can't lip read from looking at you directly. Occasionally people just turn to one side and it makes things quite difficult to understand what's going on. So I just want to get clear where the accesses to the premises are. The place that I expected to see based on the diagrams I've seen is actually the alleyway to the slightly to the south side of Lendal Cellars, Lendal, the House of the Trembling Madness in Lendal. Okay, at the present moment, that would appear to be the only access, except that you can easily get through from the Guildhall yard when the gates are open, a lot by going down to the reception desk at the bottom right-hand corner of the yard, and then onto your right, and quite quickly you get to, I think it's the lower floor of the pair we're considering here. Are those the two routes of access that you would expect people to take when the Guildhall yard is open, or will they be restricted to House of the Trembling Madness alleyway when the Guildhall's closed?
Yeah, the primary access is via the alleyway. That's the primary access.
Right.
During operating hours of the Guildhall, the gates are opened, and that alleyway is a public right of access, which allows public right of access all the way to the front of the view to enjoy the view off the terrace, because it's a public space.
Right, okay.
If we close the gates and gate off the lower access, the Guildhall access, then we have to give an allowance for the public to allow to see the riverfront. I don't believe it's very well used at all. And it's used by the university, or allowance for the university to just have that as a breakout area and a lunch area, which has been maintained. We certainly will not promote access via Guildhall.
Okay.
I think anyone who wanders down there unknowingly would wonder if it even takes you anywhere, because there's no signage and it's quite a back snickle way as such for York.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to promote the front. We need to promote the front access off Lendal. Then at the end of the day, we've got a big investment in here that we need to see. People need to have access to unrestricted access that takes them the most direct way. And as I say, slightly off subject, it's important, really important. And existing tenants within Guildhall will tell you the alleyway is not a pleasant area at the moment. It's full of bins and empty barrels. It's really not nice. And as part of our scheme, legally, that whole area becomes tidied up, completely free of any.
That leads me on to my next question, I think, which is about the access via the alleyway at the House of Trembling Madness. Is that actually part of your tenancy agreement, or
it is? Yes.
In other words, do you have control over what can and can't be placed there?
It is. It's controlled by the council. The council owned the access way. There's a rite of passage over the front. I think there's a front portion. Maybe I'm not 100% certain. Probably 8 meters or so from the frontage back. But there's a right of access, shared right of access with City of York Council and York Conservation Trust that own that building.
Right. Okay.
But the rights are in favour of the City of York Council.
I think it's important to note, as part of the operation, that area would be lit. It would be covered by CCTV, and indeed, when we have security on duty, their primary role will be to make sure that that's all kept at the gate. So actually, by allowing this application, if you were, you're promoting the objectives of stopping that alleyway being used, as it is at the moment.
At the moment, it's got a number of kegs. Empty, I trust.
I think it's also used sort of, frankly, as a toilet and other things as well.
And some waste bins in there as well. So.
So actually, this will clear that up and actually help, to keep that area.
Nobody has any rights over that space other than ourselves. For clarity.
Okay. That's really helpful.
And the council and the Guildhall team have already stipulated, matter of fact, it will be policed.
Okay, good. Thank you. I think my other question is, you've made much emphasis on the words food-led. And personally, that's the character that I would hope that this I'm going to use the word pub here because that's what's in the application. Or gastropub, sorry, yes. Well, the gastro is important as well as the pub, but I suppose what I'm asking is, why didn't you state in the application this is a food-led operation? Because I don't remember seeing those words in the application text. You've made emphasis of it, Piers. I understand that. What I'm asking is the general tenor of the application doesn't really make that come through.
No, and if there's any confusion there, I take full responsibility for that. We drafted the application. The descriptor in the premises license form, which is a very anodyne form, we tend to put fairly anodyne things in there. The conditions are the compelling factor in terms of how it operates, and that does include substantial food and hours for food. So that's where the food comes in. So I can only apologise. Planning applications, I think, are much better because you get a whole suite of documents that show everything, that describe everything. The licensing application format doesn't allow for that.
Yeah.
So whilst I appreciate that actually, if you read it on face value, you go, well, gastro, pub and brewery, what does that mean? One has to read the whole application to get the full flavour, if that makes sense.
Okay.
If I could just add as well, I think it's quite important to explain the industry at the moment is quite tough out there. You've got to be able to change the ebb and flow of your customer base. You know, if you own restaurants, generally you don't see customers through your door before 5 p.m. Generally, most people have finished their meals by 8 p.m. and generally have a drink. It changes throughout the day, and you have to allow for that. You know, we can all say we've been in venues where we've just popped in for a drink. It's a new site. So we're all a bit nosy. Let's look what's going on there. Let's have a look through the menu, and maybe we might come back next Saturday. To restrict those people from just coming in and having a drink and then leaving and saying, sorry, you can't. People don't like being told what they can and can't do. It's our responsibility to promote the wares of the business as well as we can.
Yeah.
In the same context is you cannot put together a financial profit and loss account justifiable purely either on food only or on 100% wet trade, neither of which would work. You need to have a composite blend of the two that allows change throughout the day. And that's essentially what we do.
I understand the commercial realities there.
Thank you.
Okay. I think the only question I've got besides those is, if you've got a lot of people walking down the Lendal, the alleyway from the House of the Trembling Madness, and suddenly you find that the terraces are being overcrowded, how would you deal with that? You've got a number of people on as bar or waiting staff. Do they come into the picture at this point, or you've got some security people as well? So would they be involved?
We've already stated on the key days, which are the busiest days, which are the weekends, we're having we'll have security on the front gates, on the front alleyway, controlling who comes down, who doesn't. I can tell you that as an operator, there is nothing worse than getting the wrong group of people to come into your venue to completely kill the atmosphere. When you see people leave, it's more damaging. So encouraging all and sundry to come into your venues is really not clever. So it's important we do that. Also, there's a limited service staff. People aren't going to walk in and be able to queue 6 deep at the bar and think they'll get a drink, because they won't. That generally keeps the crowds under control. If it's a lot of table service, which you can't say predominantly will be table service because that's very expensive to do, but there'll be a blend of the two. But ultimately, we have a responsibility as an operator for fire control, fire occupancy, and our fire risk assessments. And we'll have to deal with that as a specific item of how we manage it. All I can say is we have to. So it will be done, otherwise fire officer will close us down.
there are going to be, as you've heard, service stations and things like that. So people coming down and into the premises when it is very busy will be told, look, you're not going to get a table. It's unlikely you get a table.
Okay.
You know, which again, in and of itself, people will wander off and go elsewhere. People tend to book now and reserve tables a lot, much to the chagrin of myself when I go to my local pub and it's totally empty, and yet every single table has a reserve sign on it and you're not allowed to sit down, and it drives me nuts. But that's the way people do things now, is they tend to reserve if they're going out for these things, which again helps to manage numbers and also gives a very good indication of how many people are going to be there at any one time. So when you get a very experienced operator, you know how many bookings you've got, you know how much free space you've got, and you can cut your cloth accordingly.
Okay, understood. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just concerned about the time when you stop selling food until the closing time, because that's the time when people do go round and say, well, where can we go and get another drink? We've had our meal. Let's try that new place down there and all that. And they could be slightly worse for wear, but not necessarily showing it. And whether you were leaving someone in the kitchen to rustle up a nice vegetarian option, so it doesn't take too much cooking, so that they can have substantial food too.
Point out my wife's a very strict vegetarian. So the menu is, I can only talk about the things that excite me on the menu, but there are many, it's extensive, and the council's property team actually, as part of our package to try and convince them that what we were offering was a fully rounded offering, reviewed all our menus and we're quite impressed by them apparently. So yeah, don't worry about that.
You are right. New premises do attract people to have a look, obviously, but new premises become old premises fairly quickly. Secondly, yes, part of the management of any premises is managing those people who come in later, who, as you say, may have been elsewhere and doing that. But as has been pointed out, a sophisticated operator doesn't want all his regular nice customers picking up their coats and leaving because you're letting in groups, which is why things like these service stations, etc., are important. If there is a market for food later, wonderful. Keep the kitchen open. That's amazing. The reason we put a minimum time on there is simply because experience says, and we'll all know this, experience says that after a certain time, you do get much fewer bookings in terms of food, and just keeping a kitchen open, even for those 2 extra hours a night, it cripples businesses. I can't emphasize this enough. It can cripple businesses. And the whole point of the licensing regime is not to impose conditions that cripple a business. It's to balance these objectives.
Just a couple from me. In terms of signage, you're not intending to have any signs at all from the Guildhall side. That's just potluck if somebody meanders and gets lost.
You know, this is quite an interesting one. Part of the scheme and the planning scheme for the whole area was to have absolutely no parasols. So unfortunately, you've seen a set of drawings here which aren't in date. You can see these parasols on the lower areas. They're not there. All we're allowed to do is soft planting on both terraces. There's no signage at all. We're not allowed to promote ourselves at all from the riverbank side, which is quite frustrating, but we've conceded to the planners that these decisions were made a long time ago as part of the greater scheme. You will see people enjoying themselves, hopefully, from Lendal Bridge and the other side, and people will hopefully look down and say, that looks amazing down there, we'd like to go. But no, there's no signage at all.
So in terms of the entrance from Lendal, it'll be next to another pub. You'll have a sign saying, there's another pub down here.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the other operators in the city are aware of our proposals and may not be happy that competition is there, but I sometimes believe that competition is a good thing. You know, I can tell you, I've had a venue on a street and had the luxury of it being purely mine and having carte blanche to take all passing business, and then a business open over the road, and my turnover increases by 25% because it just unfortunately creates a cumulative impact.
Yeah, I mean, social media is a wonderful, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's good for marketing. And if you're marketing something different, and this is very different in terms of the food, and I know we emphasize the meat and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of those kind of things, it makes it somewhere that actually from a marketing point of view, through social media, word of mouth, that's going to be very important here, because as you say, there is not much sign that you're there otherwise.
And in terms of food, how much are you putting on to lunch? Because obviously York has a good daytime population, tourists and business. And I'm sure the objectors are probably more concerned about lunch than they are 6 o'clock in the evening. So have you anything in mind, lunch promotions or extras? Have you any thoughts of how lunch you think will go?
Yeah, there's a robust menu. It's unfortunately I didn't bring a copy with me, but it covers food throughout the day, a lighter lunchtime menu and one pushed more towards a bigger gastro experience late in the day. When you say promotions, that's also something. There's promotion. There's something that promotes something in a promotion. We don't undertake any promotions in our business. Right. Whether it be drinks or food, the menu is what it is. Specials and seasonal variations. We work with a lot of local producers, so the menu does change throughout the year. But no, I mean, as I say, if I've got a kitchen team in there from what probably will be 9 a.m. prepping, and service starts around 12, then I need them to be selling food, making food. That's why they're there. So yeah.
And in fact, one of the discussions we were having earlier is because everything's fresh and locally sourced, you can't keep it in a freezer for 6 months. You know, it has to go, otherwise it becomes wastage. So there's no incentive not to keep that being the focus of the premises.
I'll just add one last final thing. When I first moved to York some 25 years ago, what I liked about York was all the decent places were hidden away. You had to find them. There was nothing really on the high street apart from the usual big chains like Bella Pasta or something like that, you know, the big chains. I quite like things that are hidden away, little gems that are put away. I think possibly the reason why for a couple of years this has been on the market for is because it doesn't have a high street presence. I quite like the fact that it has probably one of the best views of the river on that area, south facing terrace, which is rare because York's heavily built up. Very few residents around it, and it's not going to catch all either. You're going to need to go there. You're going to want to go there because of its small entranceway. Now that would probably turn away other major multinational operators, but for me, knowing York, that kind of excites me a little bit because it's just we can control our doors. We can control what we've got. Sorry.
Thank you. Please.
Chair, please may I just quickly ask a point of clarification from the applicant in relation to one of the conditions proposed on agenda supplement 2. Yeah, it relates to the minimum seating capacity. You say that on the outside terrace areas, you give a minimum number of seats provided on the lower and upper terrace. You say when the terraces are fully open to the public. So I don't really understand myself what this condition means, because it sounds as though it's a little bit discretionary, not very prescriptive. That what would be the minimum seating capacity if the terraces are not fully open to the public?
That was simply to cover a situation where the inclement weather means you're not going to have people sitting outside, and as you've heard, you can't have umbrellas over everyone. So actually, it's going to be incredibly weather dependent. So that's why we've mentioned weather dependency there. So the idea is if it's likely to be sort of inclement or spotty weather, you can open a smaller part of it without having to put 40 tables out each time. So it's just to catch those areas when actually putting the seats out would make no sense.
There's no external service, not vertical drinking out there.
But this condition doesn't give a minimum seating capacity when the terrace is not fully open. So how do the licensing authority know whether or not you're complying with a minimum seating capacity if the terrace is not fully open? That doesn't seem to be a minimum seating capacity proposed. Oh, I see. So the wording of this condition then should perhaps be amended if the members were willing to grant an application and oppose this condition to say that
When open to
the public, not when fully open to the public.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Is that what you intend?
Apologies.
Yeah,
Yes, so,
okay,
so we
thank you
could
for
amend the
clarifying.
wording so it says when the terraces are open to the public. Remove the word fully, and I think that gets us where we need to go. Thank you.
Now it's the police.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak very briefly and I'm going to hand over to my colleague PC Hollis. It's just a couple of points I wanted to address that that Piers has made this morning. So as we're aware, this is an application for a new premises licence described again by Councillor Cuthbert and myself and in the application as a gastro brew pub, which is in the cumulative impact area. From the policing perspective, what needs to be addressed is the, like I've highlighted earlier, paragraph 9.14, and I'm pleased to see that everyone's now got the updated copy of that, regarding whether this is a restaurant style led premises. Now, this morning we welcomed hearing some clarity from the applicant and from Piers around the timings, because I think that's where there had been some confusion previously, and my colleague had PC Hollis is obviously engaged with the applicant around that. What for us needs to still be sort of addressed, and again, I take on board Piers's reference to the new updated guidance, the Para 1.18 about the national framework, but also the cumulative impact policy is an evidence-based document. It was produced in March 2025, so it's been based on police statistics and public health statistics around crime and disorder and public nuisance in that area. So just wanted to highlight that the police have been open-minded to this application. They have considered it in its own merits. And obviously, one of the things that my colleague will talk about is we've come to this to go to the applicant to ask them what they're going to offer. I appreciate that we got the updated schedule late last week, so some of those matters have been addressed this morning with the timings, but I'm going to hand over to my colleague PC Hollis to go through all the details of her engagement with the applicant.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. Yeah, so a little bit has changed, so I'll reword some of what I've got written down here, but I reviewed this application for a new premises in our CIA in the city centre. I also had the opportunity to request a visit on site, which the applicant kindly showed myself and a member of the licensing authority around the premises, which was really welcomed because it did actually help to understand some of the really great questions actually that have come forward about the entrance points, where people will break off, how things will be managed. So actually a lot of that in my considerations with the application, I was able to discuss through with Jamie and go through those things and really feel more comfortable with that quite early on. The application itself obviously was for different timings, and there were some different points on that application, and we weren't able to completely clarify those conditions and timings and things while the application was within its consultation period, which is why we submitted a representation in regard to that. So a lot of the points have been clarified, but I just want to speak a moment about some of the things that I do consider and have considered with this application. So first of all, and again, these are things that have already been said, but I want to be clear that we do consider the 182 guidance under the Licensing Act, and obviously we do consider that economic growth, and we do consider the statement of licensing policy for the city centre and that evidence-based policy with regards to the cumulative impact area. All those things been given, and the good open conversations that I had with the applicant at the time when we did the visit meant that the recommendation of the 9.14 is for things like table service, conditions that you'll have heard before, like alcohol being ancillary to the sale of food and things like this. Now, I understood from the applicant, and obviously ensuring that we are letting diverse offerings of premises open in York, that, I didn't ask for those conditions because I didn't think it would be something that would be workable for the applicant. And also we wanted to make sure that we were being reasonable in what we were asking for. And though it's very welcome that the timings have been reduced back, we've obviously got some seating numbers agreed and some door staff conditions agreed, which is fantastic. And just on that seating, because it does tend to confuse people, and we get asked this a lot. We as police ask for them. It's usually us who ask for that minimum number of seating. The reason that we ask for a minimum seating number, and again, you'll note that I haven't asked for table covers. So again, what the applicant was saying a few moments ago about having, you know, wasted tables and chairs set up ready for people to dine when there's nobody sat there. We understand that that has a financial implication. So we're just simply asking for seats to avoid vertical drinking. But we ask for that minimum number so that the applicant or the operators, when a premises is open and operating, can't just clear all the seats away and have that vertical drinking bar, the pub atmosphere. So the reason that the seats are there is to make sure that people do have to, certain numbers of people do have to sit down, because it would be uncomfortable to be stood up if you're surrounded by tables and chairs, and obviously it takes up that floor space as well. But the applicants obviously do have to still ensure they promote the licensing objectives, and they have to do that throughout. So we understand that they have to do their own fire risk assessments, and they have to make sure they're meeting those safe numbers. And they understand that they're experienced operators. You know, I wouldn't suggest that they don't. So for us, really, at this point, the only sticking point, as it were, really is fully showing that it is to us food-led. We haven't asked for them to say that food will be ancillary to alcohol, so that every single customer has an obligation to dine, because that does have financial implications. But at the moment, we still are at a point where, and I know we've just had that clarity that it doesn't open at 8, it's 10. But there is still a period of time there when opening where sale of alcohol is happening, and there's no menu available, or no obligation for a menu to be available. And then that terminal hour, you know, so from 9 o'clock until they close at midnight, we've got sale of alcohol that will go on from 9 o'clock until 11:30 p.m. And there is no obligation for them to have a menu available at that time. So for us, really, at this point, I would suggest that we would like to see the condition slightly reworded to say that the premises shall be predominantly food-led. I know that's not always the most popular thing for people, but in the absence of setting table service, waiter and waitress service, alcohol being ancillary, if we're taking those things away, we need something in there that just shows that it would be predominantly food-led, a common sense approach, so that if an enforcer were to go in and look at the premises, that if everybody is stood up drinking on that particular day, then the premises is not predominantly food-led. And so it's just making sure that there is that offer there. We would also ask that consideration is given to increasing that timing when food is obliged to be available by way of that condition 25 that was offered. So in way of a suggestion, I think North Yorkshire Police would be comfortable if a wording was added to say it was a predominantly food-led venue, and that a substantial food menu should be available to order between either the times from open and operating in the morning until 2100 hours, or until at least 2200 hours, 10 p.m, because really that then shows that a larger section of the operating hours are obligated to have a menu available. And I think that hopefully clarifies our position. I'm not sure if Jackie wants to add anything further.
No, I think Kim set that out very well. So that's where we stand at the moment from our perspective.
Thank you.
Thank
Any other
you.
questions, Brent? Here's your first one.
No questions, thanks. I'll just deal with everything in summing up, if I may.
Cool,
Thank you.
that's good. Public protection.
Hello, Michael Glightly, I'm making representation on behalf of.
No questions, sorry.
Oh, sorry, no questions.
Licensing,
Nothing from me, thank you.
representatives, you love the police, good. Any others?
Yeah, thank you. Just picking up the point that was actually fed back to me when you've just spoken. At what point would you consider, how can I put it, a slight extension of the availability of food until, say, 2200? Would that make the operation too difficult to manage? If so, what's the reason? I mean, I appreciate that you need a certain amount of time for the kitchen to close and for tables to be cleared and dishwashers to be loaded. But what I'm thinking is that if you had food served until 10, then people would see it as we are going to eat it, we're going to go for maybe a later dinner tonight, rather than trying to get it all out of the way by 7:30 or 8 o'clock or whatever.
Well,
Sorry.
can I ask you, or any of the councillors, when the last time you went out to dine at 9:30 on an evening? Nobody does. And if I'd have to stand there with a kitchen team waiting with a full kitchen with full extraction running, with all the ovens running at 9:30 on an evening. Also, the second question is, I'd ask, where have you been if you're coming to dine at 9:30 or 9:45 on a Thursday night? You certainly just haven't just come from the office. I would imagine you've probably been to other venues in town. You've decided to have something to eat because you need to be satiated. It's not the clientele we want to be coming out and catering for at that time of day. Well, certainly, even if they were there, I don't think the food that we're offering is the style of food that they should be going for. I would imagine they'd be more heading to a kebab shop or somewhere. So at great cost, I'm going to have a team of people sat waiting to feed people who we probably don't want in the venue anyway.
It is a, sorry.
You can answer you can respond to the police. So your question needs to be to the police, not for them to answer.
I can only apologise, but okay.
I've been told.
You've made the point. I appreciate that. Would you like to respond to that point if there's something you can say?
I would like to make the point, obviously, as your experts on crime and disorder, that we would consider not a huge, but a slightly longer offer for a menu to be available. I will remind you that the condition that has been put forward from the applicant doesn't say at any point that they will be food led. There is no obligation on a customer to dine. It says as a minimum in all parts of the premises where alcohol is sold or supplied for consumption on the premises. Substantial food and non-intoxicating beverages, including water, which is mandatory, shall be available to order between midday and 2100 hours. For the avoidance of doubt, a substantial food menu shall be available to order between these times. We've not asked that alcohol will be ancillary to food. We've not asked that there will be table service as mandatory or waiter service as mandatory. We're simply saying for us that should be clarified, that the premises at the beginning of that condition, the premises should be predominantly food led, to show that even though they have a menu on, that menu is used and that customers actually, it does have to be a food led premises. And we would ask for a slight extension on that, is our position from North Yorkshire Police.
I think the other thing, just to add further to what my colleague said and picking up on the applicant, in relation to, not wanting to serve after 2100 hours food, then why are we requesting till midnight being opening then? Why are we not looking at an earlier finish from that aspect? So, we have been open to, if they're wanting to finish serving food at 2100 hours, then potentially are we looking at a close then slightly earlier, as opposed to, a 2.5 hour window for people just to purely consume alcohol?
You can answer that later. Do that and you sum it up. Just for the police, is the request, is it more to do you want the table and chairs left out and not cleared away to create that culture? Or is it that the food? Just for clarification, you were saying that the tables, the minimum is to create that people are not all stood up. You can see the balcony was there, you overlook the. So is that to stop that standing up? And it's whether the food's served or not is more, you want the, as you say, it's annoying when you stand up and there's somebody sat behind you.
Yeah, so it's a good point. There's a number of different things that we look at when we're trying to consider different conditions. So the tables and chairs as one point is to ensure, it's one way of us mitigating risk for too many people being stood up drinking and that vertical drinking atmosphere, which does tend to lead to more drinking, and obviously that in itself can lead to disorder. So that's one sort of tool that we can use to show that the premises is going to be not vertical drinking by asking for a minimum number of tables and chairs, or in this case, seating it is, and that's inside and on the terraces. Of course, if they're not in operation, then they don't have to have those there. But then the food aspect and having a menu available is really to ensure that the style of the premises is more of a food-led premises than a drink-led or a wet-led premises. So there are two different conditions and two different offers, all with the same goal of trying to just reduce vertical drinking and therefore crime and disorder. Does that help?
Yeah, and in terms of food led, because obviously there's the lunch and the evening meal. So there's food led because you suggested from opening at 10. Is that more your brunch type food rather than your knuckles and your?
Well, I suppose the question from our perspective would be that if you're opening for alcohol sales at 10 o'clock in the morning, but you're not offering some food, breakfast or something like that, brunches and that kind of thing, then why, I suppose, why are you open and operating for sale of alcohol, and is that going to encourage people to be drinking? We all know in York, we have to worry about that later part of the evening, but we also, to some extent on weekends and things, have to worry about that daytime trade that can also result in crime and disorder fairly early on with your daytime drinkers and such like. So we also have to consider that. So that's why I made the point that as by way of a compromise, if there was an extension, it could be either side, but it does need to just cover off a little bit more, because at the end of the day, people are going to be able to drink alcohol for a couple of hours. We thought it was 4, but it's 2 hours in the early part of the day before you even have a menu that starts.
That's look. Come. Right, good. We shall move on to public protection. Michael.
Hello, it's Michael Golightly for City York Council Environmental Protection, and basically we're here making representation today because we couldn't agree anything beforehand. There was no real engagement with us, which was a bit disappointing, so that's why we were in this difficult situation. And I wasn't aware of many things that are being said today until today. When looking at the application, what's being proposed now with some conditions, a lot of the conditions which are being proposed after the representation time are suitable and are okay. There was just a few other little points that are a bit of concern here for us with this site. I've had a look at the site this morning when been down there, and I was a little bit concerned. The planning application for it was actually, it showed a coffee shop on the first floor level, and a separate restaurant below. Now, whether it's got planning permission or not, I don't know, but that's separate to the licensing. But what that links into is a sense of the area and how that, particularly the first floor part, would be used, and that kind of entire ambience that it would create there. You've got office space directly next to it, which looks onto that area, and the door opens onto that area where there'll be seating. Now, the question is, how do you control noise from people in drink, especially if it's not food-led, causing noise, which then disturbs, or antisocial behaviour, which then disturbs people in the offices? That's really the crux of the problem, really. It's more the daytime use, really, which is the issue for us. If you've got stag do's and hen do's coming here, and then drinking out there, and if it's not predominantly food-led, therefore there might be drinking, getting louder, more rowdy. I just can't see how you can control the noise from that area towards the office space. Then the office users, are they going to be able to use that space? Is that going to have a detrimental effect upon the impact upon the economy in York? And that's a kind of a crux of it, really, for us. It's that proximity. So you need to consider that area, how it's going to be used, what's it going to be used for. Are there any noise management plans that can be put in place there? Certainly, I would support the police with their idea that it's food-led. If it is food-led and you have to have food, or if you predominantly have to have food, then that is going to reduce the amount of just pure drinking that's going to take place there. that might be acceptable to the office staff. But it's just how do we control that noise during the day? That links into the access to the site. There is the access from Trembling Madness, but also I went down through the Guildhall today, down through the alleyway, down that way, and that does need a bit more consideration, I think. You know, it's how do you stop people from just coming through there meandering, or once people find out about that route, then using it. And therefore, you know, the applicants have said, well, people are going to have to come and say, we're sitting here. But do they have to? And are they going to clearly mark out, for example, where the public have a right of way to come and look over the river and where the customers do? So it's all that management, the outside area, which I think is the crux of our concern. From a public nuisance perspective, you're talking about the drinking so close to the office space and the office users would be classified as being sensitive receptors to a public nuisance. So that's what needs to be considered, really. Something a bit more robust about controlling the use of that outside area, that it is food led at least. Possibly a further noise management plan, which I don't think would be too intrusive and too difficult to do. And a little bit more consideration on how to mark out where people are going to be in that external area. For the smoking, I know there's going to be some new legislation coming in, but it's little things like, are you going to restrict people from taking drinks outside? Which therefore will stop them drinking later on outside as well, if that does go ahead, so it's later on in the evening. Initially, we had concerns about the use of the outside area as to what time it would be used, and we said 9 o'clock if there's residential. If there isn't residential, and we can address the issue over the impact on the office space, then it will be okay with 11 o'clock. However, it is controlling that noise from the customers during the daytime so close to what is like a mixed use space, really. I mean, if you look at the planning application, it's obvious that particularly that first floor terrace is very much like a coffee shop. So the staff would be in there, they could go out, get a coffee, it'd be nice and quiet. Then the noisier element of the application would be down on the ground floor. If they are going to have that upstairs as being an extension to the pub, then you certainly just want it to be like a food-led terrace up there. That's the crux of our concern, really. I think that about sums it up, really. You know, it's a shame there wasn't a bit more engagement beforehand. It's just that use of the outside area during the daytime. How are you going to manage that? I think the best way, if it was to be accepted, would be through making it food-led.
Thank you, Michael. Questions from peers?
I'll deal with it in some of that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Questions from the police?
Any questions, Jeff?
Sure. Licensing?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Any questions? No? Good. Any questions?
Yes, if I may have one question. Could you just expand what you were saying about the effect on nearby residents of late conversations and whatever might go along with drinking coffee or beer or whatever?
Initially we had a concern over whether there was any residential premises directly overlooking the site, and in which case, then in the cumulative impact area, we generally have a policy of reducing things down to 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, depending upon how close they are to the residents. We didn't get any clarification until this morning that there was no residents nearby. Therefore, we might have been saying reduce it to 9 o'clock. If there aren't any residents, we're okay with 11 o'clock. So ironically, from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we're better with that. This is the other way around. It's how do you control the daytime noise upon the office staff?
Okay, sorry, my hearing faded out in the middle of what you were saying. Thank you.
Just what you suggested, noise control. I mean, looking at Binton, that's why it's so useful going today. Is it possible to have any sort of noise control in there at all, or is it just the double glazing's in already, or we're going triple glazing?
I think it would be a challenge. I think it would be a challenge. You have to decide whether it's going to be acceptable or not acceptable. I can't see how, certainly with a pub, there's no way, the noise levels are going to rise. You're going to get stag do's, you're going to get people drinking, they're going to be in drink, they're going to be raising their voices. You can't stop that. They're going to be able to see into the offices. I think it's a bit of a conflict, particularly that first floor terrace area. Maybe it's less so the ground floor, but certainly the first floor terrace area is a big concern. I can't see how you can mitigate for it.
Thank you. Right. Licensing. Very good, Donna.
Thank you. I think a lot of what I want to say has been covered already by the police and public protection, but I have submitted a representation on behalf of the licensing authority. The premises, as already mentioned, is located within York's cumulative impact assessment area. This area has been identified by the council within the statement of licensing policy as being under the most stress from crime and disorder and public nuisance related issues due to the high concentration of licensed premises within that area. It's the council's policy to normally refuse applications within this area unless the applicant can show how that application will not lead to an increase in licensed premises adding to the CIA area. The licensing authority supports the representations made by North Yorkshire Police and Public Protection. Within the proposed operating schedule, the applicant has offered conditions relating to the prevention of public nuisance and a condition regarding the provision of substantial food from 12 noon until 9 p.m, which are welcomed. However, they are not considered robust enough for a premises located within the CIA area. We welcome the amendments that were made last week, but we do still agree with the police that the premises will not predominantly be a food-led premises and the risks associated with bringing a new gastropub into the cumulative impact assessment area. As we have already mentioned, the premises is identified by the council as under the most stress due to crime and disorder and public nuisance, already having a high level of licensed premises in that area. We do not believe that the applicant has demonstrated through the hours applied for and the operating schedule how the granting of a licence for this premises will not negatively impact those licensing objectives within this area. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, questions? Ears? Summing up?
Same answer as before, thank you,
Cool.
Chair.
Please.
No questions, Chair.
You're okay. Public protection?
No question, Chair.
Representatives? Nope, good. Questions?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Right, representatives, thank you for your patience. As you can see, we take a lot on with this. So first up, Chief Clare.
Okay, thank you. So on Wednesday, the 1st of April, we held a site visit at the Guildhall to discuss our concerns and review the mitigations suggested in my representation. Present were Nick Collins and Katie Morgan from the City of York Council, John Holsworth from Pivovar, James Ratcliffe from Colenso, Karen Madison from the University of York, and me. One of our main concerns is the activities and layout of the outdoor terrace and the on-site brewing operations. The following points were agreed. Use of the external terraces on both levels to be restricted to seated dining and drinking only. Guildhall tenants will still be able to use the lower terrace, including sitting at the tables if wearing their Guildhall lanyards. And we have since received a preliminary layout of the lower terrace, which will show the run of small tables on the existing benches will be reserved for Guildhall tenants during the midweek 9 till 5. We have also received confirmation from the applicant that there will be no TV screens or music played in the external areas, and we would like to request this is a condition to any licence granted. Operational hours are between 11 and midnight, that's what we were told. Planting and landscaping will be used as a natural sound buffer. Bottling activities would be restricted to evening hours to avoid disrupting office workday operations. Brewing and food preparation will utilise internal venting and council-regulated odour control systems. And a strict end-of-day clearing policy will be in place for all external areas. Several physical security enhancements have been agreed upon to prevent trespass and ensure the safety of the site. A new secure gate will be installed at the Lendal entrance, and a barrier will be placed at the second floor staircase to prevent unauthorised access to the office areas above. The Guildhall tenants will continue to have use of the internal secure bike storage. Significant improvements to the lighting in the Lendal entrance tunnel to increase visibility and deter antisocial behaviour. And window transfers will be applied to the Guildhall offices adjacent to the terrace to provide privacy and maintain a professional environment for our tenants. Safety will be handled throughout a coordinated approach between all interested parties. A fire strategy will be developed in conjunction with the City of York Council as our landlord, which includes a linked fire alarm system across the premises. To ensure clear escape routes and a public right-of-way, all waste management and keg storage will be kept internally. The Lendal entrance tunnel will remain clear of obstructions at all times. A designated smoking and vaping area will be allocated on the lowest terrace, situated as far as possible from the office windows and the primary thoroughfares to minimise exposure to second-hand smoke, and the applicant has provided a proposed plan showing the area nearest to the river for this. I would just also like to say, sort of picking up on what Michael sort of mentioned today, I have had tenants who have now, rather than signed 3-year leases, are only signing 12-month leases because they are just concerned about how this is going to affect their occupancy of the space. So I'm watching this with bated breath. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
No, thank you. I'll do that on that.
Please.
No, thank you, Chair.
Good protection. Gemma,
No, thank you.
for the representatives, questions? No.
None from me, Chair, thank you.
I probably missed it, but what's your role? You organise the tenants? and
Yes,
things?
yes. So I'm the general manager of York Science Park, and we are the leaseholder of the Guildhall, the offices and the event space. So we're responsible for letting out the offices.
That makes sense of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I've got a question, right? So in terms of, you said the leases with people saying, can we have 12 months, not 3 years? If they got all the things that you listed, was that because they, obviously you didn't have a decision yet on the license, if there is a license, the conditions. So what was the mood of those people? Was it if they get it, we're off, or is it if we get what you are asking for, then we'll probably be sticking?
We obviously moved into the Guildhall 4 years ago. Actually, it's been empty, we always understood. We always knew there was going to be a restaurant within that development. Obviously, we have been spoilt for the last 4 years because we've had it empty, and so we've sort of just been able to sort of sort ourselves out. So my tenants are obviously nervous because even though we may put in place all of these things, you don't know until it actually is operating exactly how it's going to be. And so the noise element during the working hours is what is of main concern to my tenants. So understandably, I have people who were going to sign up for 3 years who are now saying, I only want to just do 12 months because if I'm not happy and it's unbearable, we'll be off.
Cool. Thank you. Next representative. Damien.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm here representing XR Stories, which is the longest physical tenant in the Guildhall. We moved in May 2022 when the building first was opened, and it's been a delight to work there over the last almost 4 years. And we've got 2 spaces within the Guildhall, and our main office space is directly above the proposed development. And we've seen a lot of change in the Guildhall over that period of time, and we do welcome a new tenant below us, particularly because in the winter our office is very cold because it's empty. So that's going to be a positive thing, we hope, whatever happens. So that's good. And again, we agree and welcome many, or I agree and welcome many of the discussion points that we've had here today and the representations that have been made. I don't propose to offer too much additional to the representation I've already made in writing on behalf of our team. But I think probably the most important thing I wanted to iterate or to stress is the safety and security of our staff on site. And I think that is a real concern and a real challenge for my colleagues and our team, because the site is so connected. I think until there's been a plan agreed between the council and again the Guildhall in terms of York Science Park and our new proposed neighbours, I think we are very nervous about what that will mean, because there are multiple ways of going in and out of that site, and people find their way through. We only had, 4 teenagers working their way up to our office, up the steps the other day, last week, and eventually they go all the way down. And we have had, over the years, security concerns. The Guildhall reception used to have an open door policy, but that's now locked because, again, people were finding their way through, and it was not fair on the staff there. So I think, we do welcome a new tenant on site. I think the challenge is there's going to be a very, very mixed use of that site now, and that's going to change things again. And I think the safety of our staff and also the staff working at the new premises is going to be of our prominent concern. And I made the point in our representation that we were lucky to have a meeting with the original architect of the Guildhall site, and their biggest challenge was to design something where they didn't have a final set of clients as to how that place was going to be used. And I think that now this is the crux point, in that we've got an office space and now we've got a gastropub being proposed for the site, and that is going to change things and create tensions in terms of our day-to-day usage. So that was my main point I wanted to discuss. Then the final thing just was about, we do use the back way in and out of the Lendal entrance, and again, we welcome the positive benefits of that. But there will be a challenge around the bike shed, which is shared amongst all tenants in the Guildhall, because that's right next to, where people are going to be coming in to use your gastropub, and quite how that's going to work in terms of mixed use with our, people getting their bikes in and out, with people coming and going much more than already at the moment. I'm not quite sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Used answers?
Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Michael?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you.
Lewis? Nope. Questions?
Yes, one from me. You mentioned concern for staff, and that's very much appreciated. And I think the frosted glazing on the rear-facing windows that you mentioned in your submission, I had an impromptu individual site visit on the way to West Offices this morning, and I did notice that there was a lot of visibility for those staff. To anybody visit? Are they your staff? Sorry, Professor. So I'd be quite concerned. I'm all for open office environments, having experienced many of them over the years, but at the same time, if you're, how can I put it, if you're like an exhibit at a zoo, it can be off-putting, and it can completely take away your train of thought. So I would expect you're attaching some importance to that request for frosted glazing. Sorry, I get that. I'm the right person.
Yeah, I think that affects my colleague here, his team who are about to start, but certainly it would be the case with us on the upper floor, particularly if there was access via the fire staircase.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple from me. In terms of smoking you raised, I presume what you've heard, it been in front of the river, is good news for you?
Yeah, I think so. I guess it depends on how it's enforced. Again, my concern is that people will find their way around. For instance, the back door to the Guildhall office area, which is, if you look at your maps, it's on the left-hand side, and you can see sort of in the middle, next to it, well, we had the microbrewery pointed out within the red area. And then we move into the main Guildhall office space, and you've got downstairs loos and the lift and what have you. But next to those, you've got the back entrance out of the Guildhall, and that's currently says no vaping. But again, depends on the footfall through that space, who's using it and how they're using it. It may well change.
And in terms of the security concerns you raised, is it possible to put things in the right places to create that security, or is the layout of everything?
That's a really good question. I don't think that's been considered, and I guess that's why I'm here today. Really, and indeed we had a sort of walk through the site a few weeks ago ahead of making representation, and it was then only actually that I thought the biggest challenge is managing footfall through the site, and the fact that you can get from any of either entrance, apart from the gated bit, which is on a fob at the moment, but once that's open, you can find your way from one entrance all the way through the site and out the other entrance, and that does need to be managed.
Yep. Presenter 3.
Thank you. So I won't repeat what I put in my written submission, but I would like to welcome the comments that have been made this morning, particularly by the police and environmental services. So I'm speaking as one of Claire's potential tenants on behalf of a sort of high-tech group, leading group based in York, which in the last 2 years has brought £15 million of UK government investment into the city, and created over 30 highly skilled IT jobs in York, which is the sort of job that I understand that the City Council wants to encourage. And I worry about the compatibility of my business with an alcohol consumption environment operating as our neighbour, and we'd like to be good neighbours with them if the proposal goes ahead. But so as of the 1st of June, we are due to take up tenancy, and it's the area marked on your plans on the ground floor scale side on the right hand side that sits directly at the end of the passageway on your left hand side as you come down the passageway, and the proposed gastro pub development is on the right hand side. So it's the area marked on the plan at the moment as a co-working office, and if you've walked down there, as it sounds you have done, glass floor to ceiling office windows open out directly onto that passageway. So yes, privacy is a key concern. We welcome the suggestion that the applicant would provide frosted or transfer on the windows. That would be a help, but we are concerned, as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of access to the terrace will be down that passageway rather than via the interior of the restaurant on a sort of please wait to be seated basis. And I think it's obviously our concerns are really revolve around the daytime weekday usage when our offices are in use as a high-tech business with a lot of external visitors and so forth coming in. And my nightmare scenario is stag do's and hen do's, vertical drinking, leaning against our office windows and creating a lot of noise, basically rendering our business untenable, which is why I'm one of the tenants that said to Claire, we want to reduce our lease to 12 months. I'm not confident that the mitigations that have been agreed so far will resolve our concerns there. So I would like to see it being seated service only. I would like some sort of landscaping and whatever noise mitigation measures could be put in place. I was interested you say that you felt that actually it would be quite difficult to mitigate noise down there. Certainly would have to be a condition that there was no live or recorded music, no sports broadcasting during those hours. But as I mentioned before, a lot of my colleagues, 40 in total, will be potentially in that office space and adjoining offices, have raised with me concerns about the fire safety aspects. I really want to have that properly investigated and not convinced that the sort of fire strategy would be sufficient, because I want to know from the fire officer the potential of the numbers that we've heard about that might be using the terrace, combined with our 40 staff who have to exit in the event of a fire. Our fire exit is via one of those floor to ceiling windows. Also trying to get up that passageway, which you've been down, is relatively narrow, even if it's cleared of bins and so forth. So those are really, in addition to the things that have been mentioned already, those are the main concerns.
Cool, thank you. Questions? Got your answer, Piers? Please.
No questions,
No.
thank you, Chair.
No questions, Chair.
No questions from me.
Yep.
No question from me, thank you.
And you've answered what the others have answered. I think we're all in agreement on that, so that's brilliant. Thank you very much. So we're on to the summings ups. You want to break? It's only quick summings ups, you're all right. So reverse order. Summings up, 5 minutes each from the police first.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, in summing up, I would remind you to consider the policy that is the licensing policy made by City of York Council. It does stipulate the onus is on the applicant to show us, responsible authorities, how they won't add to that pressure already felt within that sensitive area. I'd like to say that North Yorkshire Police have welcomed the clarity that we've had last week and obviously today in terms of hours and some of those conditions that have been thought out. We didn't get any of that clarity through the 28-day consultation period, which was a shame, because I think there are things here that could have easily been rectified. However, we have now managed to agree some conditions with regards to door staff. The timing's been brought back, as well as a minimum seating to mitigate risk associated with vertical drinking. However, the premises under its condition 25 offered, we don't feel fully shows the premises will be predominantly food led, and that's effectively the sticking point. It's just a reminder, really, that policy states that the impact is already being felt. This is a new premises grant, it's not a variation to an existing premises. And as some of our speakers have already said, it's something added to the area. So we look at mitigating that risk in terms of staffing and door staff. And we understand that also the applicant has a responsibility under their licensing objectives to make sure that they properly manage it. And obviously in having this license, it will mean that they have got things like CCTV, adequate numbers of staff and that kind of thing, which do help us. We're not asking for refusal of this license, or we're not requesting that you consider refusal of this license as it's been put before you, but we're just asking further consideration to be given, really to ratify that condition does state the premises will be predominantly food led, and we would still ask for a slight increase to the hours in which a food menu is available in all parts of the premises when they're open and operating. And I think that probably sums up our position at this point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Smop.
Oh yeah, having heard everything today and listened to everything, I think I'm more in the mindset of saying, of advising that the application was refused because of public nuisance. The reason being just the outside use during the daytime. I can't see how that close proximity to the office space, the risk of that can be mitigated for. If you were minded to grant it, then it would certainly need to have the ingress and access and security considered. And certainly with what the police have said about being a food-led premises, that may reduce the noise levels, but there's still a big risk there from what I can see.
Thank you.
I think Kim's pretty much summarised it for me as well. The fact that it's in the cumulative impact area, and it not being classed as a food-led premises.
Thank you. Representatives?
Thank you. So in summary, the applicant has demonstrated a commitment to coexist with us by agreeing to some physical security upgrades, seated only tables on the terrace and integrated safety protocols. We do request that the no TV, no music rule for the external terrace be a condition of the licence to ensure the continued functionality of our adjacent office spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Damien?
Yeah, we very much sort of, I guess, support the police recommendation as a food only venue, and that I'm sure would give some comfort to our team and the use of the space. And again, just reiterating, apart from our written representation, that the Guildhall is a unique and flagship development for the City of York, and whatever the outcome, I think that should absolutely remain.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add, just to reinforce really that, if you're minded to grant the license, that I'd want it to be, like to see it subject to these sort of rigorous mitigations, particularly emphasis that there should be a food, predominantly food venue, and that it should be seated only, and that definitely that during the weekday daytime hours that food should be available at all time, that we're not having an environment which is just encouraging drinking parties standing outside our offices from 10 o'clock in the morning.
For 5 minutes. You've got to sum up in 5 minutes.
Deep breath, and then we can all take a break. Look, we would happily offer a condition that, as has been discussed, that the seated area outside will be seated only. So patrons will be seated only in the external area, which we think is, given that's the major concern, I think, for people here, probably, hopefully some comfort. I'd like to thank everyone for all their time here, and I've noted a little criticism at me for not having engaged earlier, but I did explain to the police and other officers that we like to get everything in first and then try and do it all at once rather than agree something here, have to amend it there, etc. There have been meetings, and we had to have time for the meetings, and we had to have time for meetings with the other parties as well. So as soon as we'd finished those meetings, we got a proposal out. So it wasn't a deliberate snub, it was just simply that's the way we tried to do it all at once and get everyone together. Why will this application not negatively affect the licensing objectives? Well, experience and evidence show that. Let's remember here that most custom to licensed premises comes outside of working hours because people work, even in a city where there's a big tourist area. That's the truth of matters, because people are out doing touring and doing other things as well. And we are talking about an external areas which is very much limited to sunny days, because we can't have giant umbrellas outside for one thing. So the number of days where people are going to be outside are very, very limited here as well. Experience and evidence. Well, we have here a very experienced operator in York who can evidence that he closes his other kitchens at 9 p.m. and it doesn't cause a flood of people to come in to get drinking, stuff down your neck. The nature of the premises compels the type of customer. And actually people tend to drift away, and sometimes the premises closes earlier than the licensing hours, like lots of premises do. So to say closing the food at 9 then promotes something else is simply not true in terms of experience and evidence. And the additional hour on every night to keep the kitchen open between 9 and 10 adds £560 in wages alone per week to the bills. And that doesn't include all the significant costs for overheads that come with it. There is a very significant cost for that one additional hour. If no one's going to eat in that additional hour, that is just money that is frankly being thrown away. And we all know that lots of premises close their kitchens by 9 anyway. That's just the nature of things, and then stay open later without causing crime and disorder or issues. The public already have a right of way down through all these warrens, and as you heard, it's not very well used, but occasionally people do get into buildings. This will put extra eyes and ears on the ground around there. There'll be staff and other people around, so that may well actually help to prevent those kind of things occurring. This building has been 4 years empty. Thank you very much for confirming that, not the 2 years that we thought. That is a very significant time for something to stand without anything in it. Why did it stand without anything in it? Because you've got to be prepared to invest an awful lot of money and time and energy into getting something working. It's a very brave thing to come along and be prepared to invest million plus in a business like this. So the numbers have to stack up. You can't just do it on a whim. They have to stack up, which is why we've very carefully considered the application. The tenancy agreements, and you've already heard, obviously, there's building managers, etc. Very happy to continue the work that's gone on. I was very pleased to hear the reference to it. Things like frosting windows, etc., probably not licensing matters, but they've all been addressed and been dealt with. Some of the licensing ones we proposed conditions for. You'd have seen the no speakers outside. If you want to change that to no TVs outside as well, not an issue to us. And the landlord has powers to give these guys a proper kicking if they don't allow you peaceful use of your own property. At the end of the day, it's the landlord who is there and can robustly enforce those things. And some of these matters actually fall within their purview, I would submit. There are no residential properties, and I hear that Mr. Golightly says, well, I could have told him that ages ago, but I mean, in fairness, he could have seen that for himself ages ago as well. We are quite happy that there are no residential properties, and 11 o'clock in the outside area where there's no residents and everyone's gone home from work is the appropriate time for the use of the external area on those few days where people want to be out at that time. And staffing is a compelling point here. You've heard about the level of staffing in the external area. As we all know, when it's a sunny day, people will be outside, not inside. When it's raining, they'll be inside, not outside. So the majority of staffing on the sunny day will be outside, managing people. And it's their job to manage and promote the licensing objectives and prevent public nuisance. I'm not sure where this idea that everyone in York is a stag do comes from. There are lots of stag do's. They don't tend to come to Jamie's places because, as you've heard, he doesn't want them there. If you're going to come as a group and be respectful, you can be respectful. So we have a balance to strike here: policy, framework, guidance, and also the framework in particular. Light touch for responsible operators. Licensing should be permissive by design. Authorities should avoid unnecessary prescriptive conditions, instead support operators demonstrating how they manage risks. I think we've done that here today, is my submission to you. So we've reduced the hours, there's significant seating, we've added more conditions. We're a local operator where we've had no issues. Cumulative impact doesn't prevent grant. You've heard from the police, they're not asking for it and it's their policy anyway. We think that the promotion of the objectives is right in the application as amended in terms of hours and in terms of conditions. Substantial food, we think, is the way forward. I submit, therefore, that this application can be granted as per Schedule 2 with the slight amendment that we open at 10 o'clock, not 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for us to clarify?
No points of clarification for me, Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Hook, any clarification?
Yeah. It just seems to be the substantial food versus being primarily food-led. Almost seems to me to be semantics. Is that really a huge stumbling block that you wouldn't have that as a condition?
I put in my email actually to the police that I think it's a semantic matter. It's just that your policy refers to substantial food. So it seemed to me that was the better approach. In either way.
Just some from me in terms of questions that were raised by the others. The hours, it was asked, if you're food led, why do you need to serve alcohol at 10 o'clock in the morning?
Well, it's nice to be able to open early, and if you've got a nice summer sun terrace for people to come along who are away and on holiday, they tend not to be large numbers at all by any means. So it's just there. People would anticipate and expect, especially maybe if they're taking a boat trip or something like that, before, you know, to be able to come and maybe just sit on the terrace beforehand.
Okay. And as a sort of seesaw, if you don't want to stay open for food later, you could close early. And as you said yourself, there may be that decision where you close because it's gone quiet and You know, I remember my dad worked in a pub and he used to sneak off. Would it cause a problem if you shut 10:30 for 11 or 11 for 11:30? I mean, you know, it's your cost that you'll be saving. So I'm just interested in what your views are.
One thing that I think is very important that a lot of operators are doing at the moment is they're closing too early, as they feel they ought to. And what that does is people become very unreliant on whether we should go there or not. Might be open, might not be open. You need a level of consistency. And I think there's seen a lot of operators suffering because they're losing the confidence in their customers that they can be trusted to be open on a certain day. So we put a minimum opening times.
And in terms of noise, this may not be for many people here to answer this one. Obviously, the inside bit will be totally different because the main concerns you've expressed is, you know, nice day, it was nice this morning, it'd be nice to sit out, drinking, having a nice sandwich. Has anybody checked how noisy it is inside the building that on the rainy days, as you said, sadly, we have more rainy days than sunny days. If everyone's inside, is the noise going to be, because that's, you could probably more noisy days inside than outside. So has anyone tested the noise? Is the wall thick enough that if everyone's inside and it's chucking it down like it was Sunday afternoon, Monday afternoon sort of thing, would it affect the workers there?
Yes, generally the building's been brought up to building control standards for Class E and sui generis use. So as a modern building control, it's fully compliant. I think it's important to stress from a noise point of view is the licensing objectives is for public nuisance. And if at any point, whatever we sit here and agree, or whatever we do and say is there now, if we're in breach of what Michael believes us to be a public nuisance, he will be on site and we will have enforcement on us because it's a licensing objective. We can't hide from that. The granting of a license and ourselves just disappearing with a piece of paper saying, right, lads, we can do whatever we like. It's not going to happen. No. So we'll have to enhance or change or do whatever it is to not create a public nuisance. So, yes.
He said what I was going to say, but if I can add in, we haven't applied for live or recorded music. No. It doesn't fit within
just the hub noise.
The general hubbub of people should very well be controlled by the fact that this was purpose built some time ago to be a hospitality premises.
Cool. And again, I'm not sure if this is for you or something. In terms of the building of putting up screens and plants, which you've suggested, is that allowable, or is it there's nobody here can answer that one for us?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, and part of the original planning consent, there's a statement that the planners must approve a fully softened external planting scheme. That also there's a requirement for a certain amount of luminaire to be visible for lighting from a distance and to local residents. And that's all part of the original planning application.
We're expecting a luminaire today. The frosty thing's not to do with you. I think fire safety, I'm hoping that that will be answered by other.
In terms of, it's a very fair point, isn't it? There's one access in and out, but actually from a fire risk assessment point of view, that will be a very significant part of the assessment.
Yeah.
And that will obviously have strategy elements to it, which everyone will feed into because it's an area that other people use.
And my last one, you said that you would happy to have seated only outside. So would that mean somebody couldn't stand against that glass frontage and enjoy the view, or you have to sit and watch it?
Can I add to this? I don't know why you would. It's in a corridor, in an element where there's no service, no visual benefit, and it's outside our terrace demise. So you can see it on the plan here. It's an open walkway. It's not even in our licensed area either.
As we say, staff will be trained and will manage that as part of their responsibilities in any event. And were people to casually go over there who happen to be customers, we would welcome anyone letting us know.
Sam's got a question.
Yes, Chair, may I seek clarification from the applicant on a couple of their proposed conditions? Condition 20, looking at your annex 2, You say that all doors and windows shall be closed between 2300 hours and 800 hours each day, other than for ingress and egress. Do you mean that the door is going to be propped open all day between those hours for people to come and go, or is it for immediate, the door will be open for?
No, what that's referring to is on the front elevations, on the south elevation onto the river, there are sliding doors on both elevations.
Right, so I don't understand this.
So there's sliding doors on both elevations, which would open between the interior and exterior.
I
The
see.
idea is those must be shut after that.
So they wouldn't be just propped
Yeah,
open all day, because thank you. Because otherwise the phrasing is often immediate ingress and egress, isn't it, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just also ask you on your condition, well, it's on the top of page 3, no bottles to be removed into outside bottle bins during office hours. I wonder whether it's clear what you are proposing in this condition by office hours. I don't know whether that's understood by everybody what office hours are, and enforcement, if this condition were attached to any license.
We could specify between 9 and 5.
I don't know what I don't know what office hours are, Chair.
If I can, I think when we met on site, we talked about from 8 till 6, Monday to Friday.
I think it's worth some clarification here as well, that actually on the drawings, we've got a designated insulated bottle store. It's part of, it's direct opposite the main front doors off the Lendal footpath. So all our bins and bottles are all stored in that area there. So there's no external storage.
Thank you, Chair. And finally, final clarification, if I may, is on condition 23. You talk about placing bottles at times that will minimise disturbance. Is it not usual to propose timings rather than, it's rather potentially vague as drafted?
That was one of the conditions that we took from a license that had been granted prior to. A lot of that has now been affected by other conditions and other offers and proposals. So for no bottles to be removed, etc., as the condition we've just discussed actually almost supersedes that to a degree. Usually, obviously, we are beholden a bit to when bin men come and refuse people. So we tend to try not to just say between X and Z if if the waste disposal have to come at other times.
Yeah, it's just in the interest of precise and forceful conditions if they are attached. Thank you.
Thank you. We will adjourn. We will come back at some point when we've made a decision. You can all hang around and wait, or we will send out it to all parties. Do we do it today by email and then a neat letter goes in 5 working days?
That's usually the case. It all depends on what time you finish debating and if Democratic Services have time to send an email out to everybody today. But if it wouldn't be today, I dare say it would be tomorrow that everybody would get notification. And then the decision letter will go out in due course after it's been written and agreed by everybody.
You can all go eat your lunch and we'll sit and think about it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.